Hello, welcome to Aliasoft webinar. My name is Alejandro Delgado, Technical Director of Aliasoft, and thank you for joining us today in this webinar with the topic Prospect for the Energy Markets in Europe, European Electricity Markets in the Half-Year Balance, Vision of the Future for the Green Hydrogen. Once again, our speaker will be Oriol Saltor, Data Analysis and Modeling Director of Aliasoft, that will present such interesting topics. During the webinar, if you have any questions at any time, please use the Q&A menu and we will answer them after the presentations. And now, I hope you enjoy the webinar. Oriol, please share your slides.
Good morning, Alejandro. Good morning, everybody. Let's start right away because we have a lot of information, a lot of things to show, and all of them are really interesting. So, okay. To start, just a few words about Aliasoft, our company, and the services that we provide. They are just 2 slides. In Aliasoft, we provide forecasting services for the energy sector. We are covering all the European energy markets and forecasting reports that go from the short term, so the day-ahead market, or forecasting for the demand an hour ahead, or the renewable energy production, up to the very long-term forecasting reports that we made that can go up to 3 decades. And obviously, we forecast demand and price for the energy markets, but also anything that can be useful for the energy sector. So obviously, renewable energy production, weather conditions, socioeconomic indexes, fuel prices, CO2 prices, anything that can impact the energy markets in any way. And not only forecast for the day-ahead markets, but also intraday prices, prices for the ancillary services, any market in the energy sector. And not only forecasting reports, but any kind of analysis on the market and their prices, like the impact of a new tax on generation, or the impact of CO2 prices, or report for lawsuits and court proceedings. So anything that can be related with the energy markets and their behavior. About our methodology for forecasting, it's our own methodology developed specifically for forecasting in the energy sectors. The 3 points that we like to stress is that it's a scientifically based methodology. It's completely scientifically based. It's a hybrid technology that combines classical statistical techniques like regression, time series analysis, econometric models, with combined with more advanced technologies from the artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. This gives our forecast consistency. Forecasts are consistent from one, so they keep their consistency over time. And what else can we say? That we have been using this technology for more than 21 years, starting in the Iberian electricity market, and now covering all the European markets. So let's start with the fuel markets and CO2 markets. These are markets in a really exciting moment. We have historical records all over the place. I always like to start with this historical view of the Brent oil price. Brent oil is kind of the reference when talking about the global economy. So putting the actual price, the present price in this historical perspective is interesting to see where we are right now. So basically, right now we are already above the price that we had in 2019, after recovering from the lowest price from 2020 due to the COVID crisis. It was the lowest price in the last 15 years, more or less. And right now we are we can say fully recovered, because we are above the levels that we had before the crisis. Making a zoom on the last years, on the last weeks. basically after recovering from the lowest prices that we had during the 2020, during the worst part of the COVID crisis. After recovering from those low prices, the increasing trend in the Brent oil price, it's been basically non-stop, and with some ups and downs, but basically the general trend is clearly upwards, and right now we are seeing no no sign of this trend decreasing. In the gas market, we have even more exciting prices, because if also we hit lowest prices during the COVID crisis, a little bit later than the lowest prices from Brent oil, basically around May, June, May and June of 2020. And since then, also we had a very a very aggressive trend, upwards trend in the price. And this trend even increased in the last weeks. So in the last webinar, it was at the beginning of June, and we were saying, okay, maybe there has been some this rapid increase in prices maybe decreased a little bit, but they prices keep growing, and since then they have grown even more. So right now, last Monday, we had a record price of let me say, was close to 38 euros per megawatt hour, and we are already above the high prices that we had in mid-20 or at the beginning of the last quarter of 2018. That was a high price episode in the gas market, and also in the electricity market, also in the CO2 price, the CO2 market also. And right now we are above that. So in 2018, we had kind of a critical situation in the electricity markets, because prices were really high. And right now we are, we would say, even worse, in the sense that we are having higher prices. Basically due to these very high prices that we are having right now in the gas market. Since that record on Monday, prices have been stable around 35, between 33. So we had a lot of fluctuations during this week. It's not clear if this is going to be the end of this rapid increase in prices. This is more or less what we said in the last webinar, and after that the price kept increasing. It's well, it's difficult to it's difficult to say, but let's say that right now, at the moment, we're having very high prices, but this at least during this week, we're having kind of a stability, that we are having fluctuations, but the general trend, at least during the last week, it's been flat in average, let's say. In the CO2 markets, well, a similar situation, where since the lowest prices or the crash during the March 2020, due to the COVID crisis, prices had recovered, increasing rate has increased, and already in the last webinar, we saw that historical high are close to 56 euros per ton. On Monday, we hit again a highest record. At that time was close to 58 euros per megawatt, euros per ton. But the price has been bouncing between 50 and this 54, 53. Then we hit this new record of close to 58. But for the last month, we are not seeing an increasing, an upwards trend. So most of the forecasts, more of the analytics are showing that probably until the end of the year, we will be having very high prices at this level above 50 euros that we are having right now. But the most probable situation is that the prices will not keep growing. They will be bouncing. Maybe we can hit 60 euros at some moment, but it's the most probable situation is that we will not be exceeding this this roof that we are seeing just below 60 euros, that prices are trying to break this ceiling, but they are not getting it. So probably the most probable situation is until the end of the year is that we will be having high prices, but at least the trend will be stable. If we look at what the future market are saying about how the market agents are seeing the prices right now for the next years, compared with the forward curve that we saw during our last webinar at the beginning of June. So for the Brent oil, as the spot prices have been increasing, the prices for the forward curves for the next years at the short term have increased, but from 2025 on, prices are remaining the same around this stable price at the long term, around $60 per barrel. So basically some increase in the short term, little less in the midterm, and the same situation at the very long term. In the gas future markets, what we are seeing, obviously due to the rapid increase in the spot price, we see how the future prices have increased a lot, but it's only in the very short term. So if this is giving us some clues about how the spot market can evolve in the next month, basically, as I said, until the next winter, we are going to have high prices around or above this 35 euros per megawatt hour, but then prices at the mid and the long term have basically not changed. In the CO2 prices, basically, as I said, since the last webinar last month, the spot prices have been fluctuating, but the trend has been stable. So the forward curve has it's basically in the same place. And looking at the electricity forward markets, due to the increase in the gas prices and in the gas future prices, what we are seeing, it's a huge, let's say, huge increase in the prices for Cal 22. So basically, right now we are having prices above 70 euros per megawatt hour in all the markets. Those are very high prices, because we are talking of the average price of the whole year. So imagine a whole year on average above 70 euros per megawatt hour. Those are very high prices. Italy, UK also are the most expensive ones, even close to 80 euros per megawatt hour. But then rapidly, Cal 23 prices were kept at the same level. So basically, this huge increase that we have seen in the gas prices basically affected Cal 22. So prices for the gas in 2022 and for electricity in 2022. We are seeing no impact from 2023 on. So that's a clue. That's a clue that probably it's difficult to see even more higher gas prices in the near future. So this is one of the clues that is telling us that probably until the end of the year, until the next winter, we will have high prices, but probably in a stable trend, in a stable situation. And for concluding this first part, basically are the same conclusions that we had in our last webinar 1 month ago. So even some of the sentences that you are seeing are exactly the same that we were seeing in our last webinar, because the situation is quite similar. So again, as we had last time, CO2 prices are very high, but are stable. So this is what we are expecting to see until the end of the year. So having CO2 prices stable, the the most upward pressure that the electricity markets can see will come from gas prices. So basically, if gas prices remain stable, as we are seeing during the last week, probably, well, for sure, electricity prices will remain stable. Probably over in high values, but stable. And if gas prices keep going up, that it's less probable, but still it's probable, then electricity prices will suffer some upward pressure and upward trend. So right now, all the attention is on gas prices, and this is what will decide how the electricity market prices evolve. That's on the short term, or at least until the end of the year. In the midterm, as we were saying in the forward curves of electricity and gas prices, and what we are, and that's what we are seeing. Our models is that right now electricity prices are high above of the equilibrium price of the market. So on average, in the midterm, prices will go down in order for the market to keep working, because very high prices high above the equilibrium price cannot be kept for too long. We will see something more about this, how prices are right now respect to the equilibrium price at the end of the webinar. And at the long term, things are basically have not changed despite this high episode of high prices that we are seeing right now. Okay, excuse me for a sec. So on this second part of the webinar, we are going to see how the electricity markets have behaved during this first half of 2021. So it's kind of a milestone. So we can take a look back and see what we have seen during this last 6 months, and maybe trying to see what we will see in the next 6 months. So as we are covering a lot of markets, I will not be able to go through every market. I will show some summary across the markets. We will focus a little more on the Spanish market, but I always show you this online platform that we offer, where you have basically all the information that you need in order to follow and to analyze all the data and behavior of energy markets in Europe. You have all the electricity markets. You are seeing Spain right now, where you have all the variables. This is the price for the electricity market, and we can put it into some perspective. And as we are going to look the evolve during the last 6 months, basically you can see how we had very high prices during January, during to the Filomena storm and the cold temperatures and the increasing demand that we have. Then in February, we had very low prices, the lowest prices in all the European markets. That's something that's not usually the situation. Spain is usually on the high side of the electricity markets, but during February, we were the lowest ones. And since then, the upward trend is very clear. So it's easy. You can even put a straight line here and see how the prices have been consistently increasing during the last month. You can even change the granularity, so you can put into a daily granularity, or even weekly to just to remove all the weekdays pattern and see, well, the upwards trend it's quite clear. You can also have what was that, fuel prices, for instance. You can see the forward the spot price for the TTF gas, for the Spanish MIP gas, CO2 prices here, CO2 prices, and you can even make comparisons and some more or less advanced analysis. For instance, we can compare, for instance, the TTF price and the Spanish price and the Spanish gas and the European gas, and see how obviously they are following a very similar trend. And we can, for instance, if we show them since January, we can see some special situations that we had in Spain during the Filomena storm, during the increase in the gas demand. We had this large peak in the Spanish gas prices. Let's put it into February. So we are removing this part, and we can compare, for instance, with the CO2 prices that I'm going to put into another axis. Sorry. And you can see what we have been saying, basically. Gas prices have been increasing, hitting high prices during the last week, but then it looks like we can be at least in the plateau of these very high prices that we are seeing. Let's see if this is what we will be seeing for the rest of the year. And in the CO2 prices, we hit the high records at the beginning of June, and then we had kind of stable situations, hitting also record prices on Monday. But since for the last month, the situation on the CO2 prices has been quite stable, let's say. And well, you also have futures, electricity futures, macroeconomic data. Here you can see, for instance, the evolution of the GDP or the IPI, the industrial indexes for all the countries. We are adding more data every day. So, for instance, this is the GDP for Spain, and if you put it since January 2019, you can see, for instance, the impact of the COVID crisis. So decreases from more than 20% a decrease in the GDP. Well, this is more or less a very general view of what you can find in our platform. What I will show you now, and is just a summary or focusing in some interesting topics. Aside from the forecasting reports and the online platform, we also have market analysis reports on analysis on any aspect that you can think about of the energy markets. So about the electricity demand and how it has evolved during this recovery of the crisis, in order to compare the electricity demand in all the countries, as every country has a very different volume of electricity demand, we scaled all of them to the electricity demand on January 2020. And from there, you can see how the COVID crisis impact on every country. Italy was the first one to receive this pandemic, and the first one to impose restrictions, and is the first one that already in March was feeling an important decrease in the electricity demand. And since then, the recovery has been more or less quite rapid, depending on the countries. There are countries that are feeling more the high temperatures, Spain, Italy, but basically we can say that in January all the countries were at the level of at the electricity demand levels previous to the COVID crisis. And since then, well, every country is feeling has a different sensitivity to weather conditions. So this is how the demand is evolving differently in every country. And as we are doing this balance of the first half of the year, we are including some markets that we are usually not reporting, and markets that we think that they are interesting because they can offer interesting opportunities for investment in renewables, for instance, because our markets that are less saturated, let's say, in investments, and they are countries that like Poland or Romania with a lot of electricity production from fossil fuels. So there is, for instance, Poland and Romania have a lot of coal, Romania also oil. So there is a lot of electricity produced from fossil fuels. So there are large opportunities in order to invest in renewables in those countries, and we usually don't show them. And we thought that it would be interesting to show them in these occasions that we are doing a more general balance on the last 6 months. And this is how the electricity demand evolved in these countries. I grade the ones that we saw before. So basically, as I said, countries in the southern part of the continent, like Greece, and it's following the same path that Spain and Italy, and then Serbia is following the path of France, more or less. So basically, every country following its own path. In the case of the evolution of the electricity markets prices, we are seeing, as we usually see, a more coherent evolution along all the markets. So these are the markets that we usually see. So Italy, Spain, France, Germany. So the central markets in Europe and the largest ones. And basically, we can see how all the markets since the lowest prices during March, April, June of 2020, basically all of them are following this aggressive upwards trend. UK is the one having the highest prices right now. In the lowest part, as I said, we had Spain during February, but now Spain is having high prices. Usually, in the lowest band, we find the usual ones. So France, Germany, these markets with lot of nuclear power or lot of renewable capacity that usually have lower prices. If we look at the prices of these new of these other markets that we usually don't look at, we see how, for instance, Poland, Greece are markets that are having prices, interesting prices, because are above the mean, the average prices that we are seeing in Europe, and also Romania and Serbia, that are countries that are have prices in the range of the rest of the market. They are usually in the higher side of this of this average of a European market. So they are interesting countries, interesting markets with interesting opportunities. Sorry. And as I said, we will pay a little bit of more attention into the Spanish market. So this is the evolution of the capacity mix in Spain. So at the end, we are seeing the last 6 months. I also included 2020, but because 2020 it's not a very good year in order to make comparisons, I also included 2019. So sometimes it can be a more fair comparison. So just looking at the graph, you could say that it's not been a very interesting year when increasing capacity or the evolution of capacity of the different technologies in Spain. But looking closer, photovoltaics capacity has increased in the last 6 months, just in the last 6 months, by 7%. That's more, or 760 megawatts. And if you compare it with the beginning of 2019, that's quite far, we've seen an increase of nearly 8 gigawatts. That's an increase of nearly 200% or 150%. Wind capacity also increasing at a lower rate, 225 megawatts since in the last 6 months. That's close to 1% increase. And 4.2 gigawatts since 2018. In the global of all the renewable energies, we have had nearly one gigawatt of new renewable energy during this first half of 2020. And Also, very interesting is the evolution of the coal capacity. As we will see afterwards, coal production in Spain, it's right now just testimonial, it's very marginal. And the capacity have been reducing in the last years, and just in the last 6 months we have get rid of close to 1 gigawatt of coal plants. And since 2019 more than 50%, I think it's 52% of the coal capacity in Spain has disappeared. If we look at the generation mix, what we can see in the last 6 months is that we had quite a lot of wind energy and hydro productions at the beginning of the year. In the whole half year, renewable generation is accounted for 52% of the total generation. This means 20% more. It's a 20% increase with respect to the first half of 2020. And the total electricity generation increased by 8% compared to the first half of 2020. This large increase is basically because during the first half of 2020 we have the greatest impact of the COVID crisis. So this is basically related with the recovery of the demand, the electricity demand, and obviously the recovery of the electricity generation. As I mentioned, you can see how the coal production is basically testimonial. Since the beginning of 2019, where coal was still quite present in the generation mix, in the Spanish generation mix, it rapidly disappeared in 2019, and just now, and right now is just testimonial, meaning not even 1% of the production. If we look closer at the daily generation mix since January, so this last 6 months, we can see some interesting things. For instance, as I said, coal power is just testimonial, but it had an important contribution during the Filomena storm, where we had a very huge demand. We had also very high gas prices, as I showed you in the online platform in Spain. So very high gas prices means that the coal becomes more competitive. Obviously, if gas production gets more expensive, then coal it's more competitive. Also, it helped to cover the electricity demand. As you see, we were having not very much wind energy production. So a lot of demand, high gas prices, less wind energy. This means that was the ideal situation for the coal production to enter into the mix. But since then, basically, it's been testimonial. We can see also some interesting things, like you can see these reductions of nuclear power. We had several of them during this 6 last month. The first ones was at the end of the last weekend of January, then also some weekends in February, and this was basically a reduction because we had a lot of renewable production, very few demand, because after the Filomena storm, basically the weather conditions improved rapidly. So February was a mild, we had very mild weather conditions, so the demand dropped rapidly, combined with a lot of wind energy. Basically, all the nuclear power need to be reduced. And we had a couple of, or at least a couple of episodes of this nuclear power reduction during this last 6 months. And another interesting thing that we can see is how the wind and solar technologies they are kind of complementary in the seasonal aspect. So you can see how during the winter and the spring we had a lot of wind energy production, also a lot of hydro production. But then as we are getting close to the summer and to the warmer conditions, wind production starts decreasing, and as solar radiation increases, photovoltaic and also the solar thermoelectric production increases. So they are a kind of complementary in this seasonal pattern. So when we are having a lot of wind, we don't have so much solar production, but when wind production decreases, then solar production starts increasing. This is an interesting complementarity between these two renewable technologies that are the ones that are going to increase a lot at least until 2030. That are the first renewable capacity targets that we are having. And well, it's this topic is very interesting because also at the hourly level, they also have kind of complementarity. So we have a lot of wind production during, a lot of photovoltaic production during solar hours, but then in the afternoon is when on average the wind production starts increasing. So they are two renewable technologies that are going to lead this energy transitions, and it's interesting how they complement at the seasonal level, but also at the hourly level. Well, it's interesting. I just wanted to mention it. This seasonal complementarity that can be easily seen in this graph. And looking at the at the electricity exchanges from Spain with other countries. Spain is, well, the Iberian Peninsula. It's kind of an energetic island, so it's connected to France, but the interconnection ratio it's 10%, I think. So it's not very connected. We also have a connection to Africa through to Morocco, but basically the most important, most of the exchanges are with Portugal, where we are basically most of 90% of the times coupled. So we are interconnection are not saturated, so we end up having the same price. And also with France. So looking at the balance of the interconnection for the last 6 months, we see that it's basically, so in the exchanging electricity means basically comparing the prices of the two markets, the Iberian market and the French market. So if the balance is on the export, then this means that we had a lower price. That's what happened in February, as I mentioned. Spanish market had a very low price during February, so the net balance was on the export. But since then, the imports of energy, because Spanish is having high prices, also the rest of the Central European markets, but Spanish it's a little bit higher. So we are basically importing energy, importing energy from the other countries. So and now we are going to move to the last part of this webinar, talking about what's going to be the role of the green hydrogen in this energy transition. We wanted to include this last part in our last webinar in June, but we had no time because we were also talking about the decarbonization of the industry sector. So we decided that it was better to to just dedicate another webinar talking about that. To put it into perspective, basically, the energy transition means that we have a clear target. The last and the ultimate target that we're having is to get to the climate neutrality. This means that our emissions had to be net zero. This means that if we end up producing or emitting some CO2 and or greenhouse gas emissions, we had to compensate them in some way. So the obvious target is reduce all the emissions, and what we cannot reduce, we have to compensate it in some other way. So these are the ultimate target for 2050, but the closer target are for 2030. And just yesterday, the European Commission agreed on, they previously agreed on increasing the target of the reduction of emissions from 42%, it was, I think, previously to 55%. This means that the share for renewable energy had to be, this 32% was the one that was before this 55 was agreed. So yesterday they agreed that the share of renewable energy on energy consumption has to be 40%. So this is a very ambitious ambitious target, because well, we have been talking also only on electricity generation, but we are consuming energy not in the form of electricity, so in transportation, in industry, agriculture, forestry, but everything that we do in life, heating, everything that we do in life, we basically consume energy, and this energy is not always coming from renewable energy sources. So it's not electricity generation that we have to change, that we have to, but also every other aspect on our lives. And linking to with what we end up saying in our last webinar, that we were talking about how decarbonizing the industry, at the end, what we are saying is that the CO2 emissions, or greenhouse gas emissions, these are the evolution of the emissions in the European Union since 2019. What we have to do is to reduce this to as close to zero as we can, and then compensate the rest. So basically, if we want to reduce all these emissions from the industry sector, if we do it through electrification, so instead of using fossil fuels, using electricity coming from renewable energies, basically we will be able to reduce these emissions by at the most 50%. This is because the energy used in industry a lot of the time is used to produce heat, and producing heat with electricity is not very efficient, and the temperatures that we can get are not very high and some industrial processes need much higher temperatures. So basically, we will try to electrify the industry, but we will need something else. We will need to reduce the emissions in some other ways, and green hydrogen is going to play an important role here, because if we use gas, if we use natural gas, it basically means that we can end up using hydrogen more or less in most of the cases. So green hydrogen is going to have a huge role in decarbonizing industry sector, but also transportation, as we talked in another webinar, and also in heating, in district heating. So just to mention how green hydrogen will have a very important role in this energy transition. And we have roadmaps for hydrogen. We have roadmaps for the European Union and also for Spain. And these roadmaps establish electrolyzer capacity targets for 2024, for 2030, and then for 2050. For 2024, we have a target of 6 gigawatts for Europe, 10% of them in Spain, 40 gigawatts in Europe, and 10% of them in Spain. And then for 2050, there is no a specific target for electrolyzer capacity, but the roadmap basically says it has to be a mature technology deployed at the largest scale. So basically, it has to be commercial and used everywhere where it needs to be used. And it's interesting to see that although the capacity target is it's 40 gigawatts. There are already committed more than 67 gigawatts by 2030. So we have been listening a lot in the news about about hydrogen, new projects in hydrogen, green hydrogen production. So it's a very promising technology. It's going to, let's say, it's going to solve a lot of problems. So and there is a lot of new investments. A lot of money it's going to be needed, but it looks like companies, like the governments are into it at 100%. So so it's interesting to see how we are already committing more capacity that the target that we are ourselves putting. There are also targets on hydrogen production. So we are expecting we should be able at the European level to produce 1 million tons of hydrogen by 2024, 10 million by 2030. And it's interesting to see comparing these production numbers with the capacity targets for these same years. And well, they are kind of optimistic because using just the capacity that we have seen in the target, it's difficult that we will be able to produce so much hydrogen, because it would require production efficiencies that are not realistic and or at very far from what we are expecting right now. So just an interesting to think comparing production goals with capacity targets. Looking at more into the Spanish targets for 2030, it's the first stage, 2030. As I said, 10% of the European target, that is 40 gigawatts. 4 of them will be in Spain, and this first stage we are thinking basically in electrolyzers located close to where the hydrogen will be consumed. So industry, fueling stations. So we are, by 2030, we are not thinking on a huge network of hydrogen distribution. We are basically thinking producing hydrogen where it's going to be needed and close to the consumption points, let's say. Also, targets for industry, 25% of all the hydrogen that is used in the industry must be green hydrogen. Also targets for transportation, so number of buses, heavy duties, fueling stations, and also in the train network. So having some of the railways that are not already electrified, because in railway transportation we have a lot of the railways already electrified, so this is not going to be a problem. But some of the ones that are not electrified will need to use some other fuel that it's not a fossil fuel. So some of these will need to use hydrogen also. And in the power sector, for 2030, what we are expecting is that we will have already commercial projects operating using hydrogen to consume surplus of renewable energy, and also using hydrogen in order to storage for seasonal storage of electricity. And looking to 2050, basically the targets are we should be able to be using hydrogen wherever it is needed. So basically large scale, large production, enough production to cover all the necessities. So, well, in order to produce hydrogen, we need to understand what's the cost of producing green hydrogen, because this is going to be one of the keys in order to make it competitive, to make it more affordable than producing hydrogen, let's say gray hydrogen or brown hydrogen. So it's hydrogen produced from fossil fuels. So what are the costs of producing green hydrogen? Well, it depends on several factors. Basically, how large is the electrolyzer, how much time is the electrolyzer working, if the electricity that you are consuming is produced on site or you have to buy it from the grid. So it's difficult to say, well, these are the costs, these are the fraction that that every factor is impacting on the whole cost. But for instance, for a large scale, let's say in an industrial facility producing a lot of hydrogen at the basically full load, so working 95%, 99%, 99, 95% of the time. Basically, you have like 30% coming from capex and opex, so the cost of your investment and the cost of operating, and then most of the cost comes from electricity. That's obviously because we are talking about a large machine that producing hydrogen all the time. So most of your cost will come from the electricity that you are using to produce this hydrogen. If the machine is smaller or you are using it not all the time, then obviously the cost of your fuel, that it's electricity, it's going to be less, and most of the cost will come from capex and opex. Also, if the electricity prices go down rapidly, then obviously the cost of electricity, the fraction of the electricity over all the cost will be smaller. So, and what's the target, or how we are going to make this the green hydrogen production competitive? Well, as we have seen, there are a lot of factors. Right now, depending on the technology, depending on the cost of the electricity that you are using, the production of green hydrogen right now can range from 3 to 7 euros per kilo of kilogram of hydrogen. The target is to be able to produce it between 1 to 3 euros per kilo. If we get to this target, and as we expect that gas and CO2 prices are going to increase, then the cost of producing hydrogen from fossil fuels is also going to increase. How rapidly they increase, or how rapidly the cost of green hydrogen decreases, this will depend, as I said, on all these factors, and at some point they will cross, and we will, at that point, we will be green hydrogen being more competitive than producing it from fossil fuels. So what we expect to be the major drivers when decreasing the cost of producing green hydrogen? Well, there are several factors, as I mentioned. The most important ones, the ones that we expect to have more potential on reducing these costs, are the cost of the electrolyzer, so the cost of the machine itself, the cost of electricity, and the efficiency of the electrolyzer. So basically, we have two categories. One is the electrolyzer capacity, technology, sorry, how we will improve the technology, reducing the cost of the machine, improving their efficiency, increasing their lifetime. And the other one is the cost of electricity. So if we can reduce or improve in these two concepts, those are the ones that are going to have a larger impact on the decrease on the cost of producing green hydrogen. And talking about the electrolyzer technology, the improvement of this electrolyzer technology, right now, about the efficiency, we are in the range of depending on the technology, between 50 and 80 or 90 kilowatts hour of electricity to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen. This is around 42%, between 42% and 67% of efficiency. What the targets for 2050 is to get to an efficiency of 74%. This means using just 45 kilowatts hour to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen. The other aspect is as I said, with a lot of potential, is the cost of the machine. So the cost of the investment in building and buying the machine. And right now, depending on the technology, the alkaline technology is the one that is more used nowadays, and it's between $500 and $1,000 per kilowatt. And the last used proton exchange membrane, it's between $700 and $1,400 per kilowatt. So, and the targets for 2050 is to reduce this cost down to $200 per kilowatt. That's a huge decrease in the cost of the technology, but it's what we are expecting in order to make green hydrogen production at larger scale as we expect. And just we are reaching the end. Yeah, we are. I'm nearly out of time, but just to finish, we wanted to make just a little exercise in order to understand how everything is going to change. So we will need to change the mental picture that we have about energy consumption, electricity production, and the role that electricity and green hydrogen is going to have in this energy transition. So here we are comparing in blue the electricity demand in Spain. It's around 20 terawatt hour per month, compared to the gas demand just for the industry. So, and you can say that you can see that they are both very similar. Okay, let's make just the exercise of thinking all this gas that we are using in the industry. Let's change it for hydrogen. So all this gas that the industry is using, we are going to use hydrogen, we are going to use green hydrogen, and we are going to use electricity to produce all this hydrogen that we will need to replace the gas for the industry. How much is going the electricity demand to increase due to this that we want to make, due to trying to use just hydrogen to replace all the gas demand in the industry? And the answer is we will at least double. So just using hydrogen instead of gas just in industry, this would mean doubling the electricity demand in Spain. And here we are using the 74% efficiency that we are expecting in 2050. So it's not an efficiency that we are getting right now. So, and this is just industry. Obviously, not all the gas in the industry can be replaced by hydrogen, but it's just an exercise because here we are only thinking about hydrogen in the industry, but think about residential gas demand that we have also to change, gas demand for heating, for transportation, for electrification of light vehicles. So electricity will also increase because we will be electrifying, not just producing hydrogen. So with this little exercise, we can see that we will need at least twice the electricity that we are using right now. So the change, we have to change the paradigm. The picture is going to change completely. We are in this energy transition will be huge. Okay, just to finish, a beautiful picture of the Eiffel Tower, powered, colored in green, powered with green hydrogen. And as I mentioned, I want to close this webinar reminding that markets are working because there's an equilibrium between the cost of producing energy, the prices that the consumers are willing to pay. So there's an equilibrium that makes everything work. So we always show this long-term price forecast that we made in 2010. To see how our model projected the price equilibrium for the coming years and how the real price of the market has been fluctuating, but fluctuating basically around this equilibrium market. So you can see that we have high price episode, low price episode, but basically they are after one high price episode, we have a low price episode, high, low, high. Right now we are high. So the next step, obviously in the midterm, what we are expecting is the prices will go down back to the equilibrium. Just in case it's not the actual situation that we are seeing of very high prices is not what we are going to see in the long term. Just wanted to finish with with this message. And I'll just invite you to our next webinar. It's going to be in October, so August and September. We will not be making webinars. Maybe we will make some workshops about some of the tools that we are offering. But in October, we will have again panelists from Deloitte invited. So, and it will be just 1 year after the last webinar with Deloitte panelists. It was a very successful webinar, so we are very excited about having Deloitte again in our webinars. And we will be talking again to see how energy markets, how the financing of renewable energy projects have been changed in the last year. And okay, I'm already out of time. Alejandro.
Thank you very much, Oriol. That was a great presentation, such an interesting topic, especially the impact of green hydrogen. So we will start now the Q&A section of this webinar, and since we are already out of time, we will answer only a couple of questions. I will answer the first question. I have it here. Do you also offer the long-term forecast for Poland, Greece, Romania, and Serbia? The answer is yes, of course. As Oriol mentioned, we are offering these long-term price forecasting reports for most European markets, including the ones you are mentioning. Actually, the reports for Poland and Romania are some of the most demanded from our clients, along with Spain and Italy. So, Oriol, I believe you already have a question selected.
Yes, I have a question that we are having quite often, and it's really interesting to answer. It says, in your report of long-term reports, why confidence band and not low and high scenarios? That's a very interesting question, because, and I like to explain it because it's not usually what you find in long-term reports. Usually you find the central forecast and highest scenario, lowest scenario. And in our forecast, we are offering confidence band. So what's the difference? Why you want a lower scenario, for instance? Well, people would say, I want to know what would be the price in case of very low demand, very high renewable energy, very low gas prices. What would be the price on those situations? Well, you can have that scenario, but what will you do with that information? I mean, well, the price obviously will be very low if there's very high demand and low gas prices and a lot of renewable energy production. But what will you do with that information? What we are doing with the statistics, with simulations, in order to produce confidence band, is that we are combining all the possible situations that we will find in demand, in electricity demand, all the situations in gas prices, all the situations on renewable energy production that has a lot of variability. And we are producing thousands of scenarios with all these variables and with the probability of occurrence of all these scenarios. And what we end up with the confidence band is a combination of all the possible situations. And what is more, you obtain the probability of that price occurring. So you are not going to have a lower price for the lowest scenario that you only know that, well, it's the price that you would have in such a worse situation, but what's the probability of that situation occurring? It's 1%. Well, maybe then I don't need to worry, but it's 10%, it's 20%, you don't know that. With a confidence band, you know that there is a 15% of probability that for a given year, the price will be below or above a certain point. So it's basically having a lot of more information just with that one value that describes a given situation that it's, well, you don't know how likely it is to happen.
Thank you, Oriol. I have another question here. Are you also active in the Nordics? The answer is yes. Over the past 3 years, we have delivered several reports at the long term for both the system of the Nord Pool and even specific countries and even at specific market zones. We are providing these long-term reports, mostly for renewable companies and even banks, investment funds looking to finance renewable projects there. But yes, we are we have great experience in the Nord Pool market. So, since the time have run out already, we will answer the remaining questions directly by email. And thank you again, Uriol, for your great presentation and the audience for joining. So have a nice day.